Maybe let me use this example, which sounds very common and gets to the classroom. The students ordinarily like discussion, especially when it is a topical issue, something that is very interesting. The lecturer comes to the class and the throws it and sets the ball rolling, and the students are just raising their hands and they are just interacting. In getting information and seeking the information. It is against the best practice and it is punishable by law to get information from someone to be used for research when that person has not given his consent to be part of that research. So you may succeed, such a lecturer may succeed in getting all the information that he needed. And if he goes ahead to publish it, because he even knows the students, he can even mention the number of students that gave the information and everything. But if a student reads it and they remember vividly that these human and these were the responses that we gave, which have become maybe this research output. If such a person is sleep with us, he is liable to punishment because it is unethical. Anytime you are getting information from someone, always, first of all, seek for consent. It's very important. Especially in these days of technology, of technological advancement, where everybody has a device, a recording device. You know, it is not difficult for someone to come here to get the information. The person may just get his phone, put it on recording, and put it in his pocket. And people are discussing, and he is recording everything. And this thing may go on for 1 hour, 2 hours. And he gets to, immediately at the end of 6 he puts it off, gets to his house, and then begin to replay it again and get all the information, arrange all of them, and mix it as his letter. As beautiful as it may seem to be, it is unethical. Any person that will want to record his voice, he must get consent from such a person. If you fail to do so, it's only unfortunate that maybe in the part of the world where we are, you know, so many things are taken for granted, and nobody cares. Even when someone has the right, and he sees that his right is being trampled upon, such a person may decide, let me not come, so that they will not say that I have failed, and the person keeps quiet. But it's not so elsewhere. If we must get someone involved in our research, that person must be a consent. Even if the person is a sick person and the person needs to be used, and I want to say this again, because maybe I am in this faculty today. Unfortunately, I'm not speaking to the right audience. Doctors abuse this a lot. They abuse this a lot. You may not understand what I'm saying. What do you think that a doctor, even when you have somebody comes to the hospital and they has all their lab results conducted in a very wonderful labs and comes to meet the doctor says, no, you are going to lab again. You go and do another test. What are the things that are causing those things? All of them are not, I'm not saying that some are not correct, but all of them are not as a result of professionalism. Some of them are information collection. They want to go and collect information. And at the end of the day, before you know it, one paper has come out of you. If you go and check the number of publications, especially by doctors in the academics, some of them publish every month. Where are they getting the data from? That's why when you go to like a teaching hospital, very simple sickness, a team will gather together. And this person is checking this, that person is checking that. What are they actually checking? I'm not saying it's not correct. It's correct because they are doing their work. But all of them are not just because they want you to be alive. Some of them they are looking for data, information. And once they get it, the next week they have written it and it is published. When the patients are not aware, it is not correct. It is, they are trampling on people's rights. Like, that was why I said it's unfortunate that I'm not speaking the rights of this. It is not right. When you want to collect information for research from someone, tell that the person is a patient. You say, sir, man, I need to get information from you. There is a work I'm doing, and I want to include you in my study. Your name is not going to appear anywhere, but it's just to get information from you based on the sickness that you are going through. And the person will say, ordinarily, such a person will say no problem, because his name is not going to appear there. There's no information that will link anybody to him or her. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. Yes. But most of the times, doctors don't do it. They will just get you and they are doing all manner of diagnosis. And as they are doing their writing. After that, the team will just go and look at it, analyze it, and they are getting the paper. It is not correct. Because people are actually in health sciences, majority of you will discuss with the health people. Don't take advantage of that. If you want to conduct the research, let the person know. It doesn't take anything. The person will say, no problem. So long as I will not be identified, what is the problem with that? So, it's very important that before you get information, before you include someone in your research, that person should give you a consent. Now we talk about questionnaire method. This involves introducing to the target respondents a list of structured questions, which has provision for answers to be supplied with a view to obtaining the responses as the data for your research. Now, the list of the structured questions with provision for answers, this list is called a questionnaire. It is a list of structured questions. And it is not any question that you remember that you put there. That's why it is called structured questions. It is not a random questioning. It is just a structured question where the respondents will just be giving answers to each of them. And those answers will make the data that you are going to analyze for your results. Now, I have put here there are qualities of a good questionnaire. Every questionnaire for every work is not just okay. There are qualities that a good questionnaire should possess for it to be adequate for the study that they are embarking upon. Number one is introductory notes. The essence of introductory notes is just what I have said about the doctors. The introductory notes should be in every questionnaire where you will introduce yourself and let your respondents know the purpose for which you are trying to get information from them. At the same time, in that introductory note, you should assure your respondents the confidentiality of the data you are getting from them. This is very important. If you don't do that, someone may misunderstand you. And because he has misunderstood you, he may decide to decline, or he may decide to give wrong information. But for instance, you are a student and you are embarking on a study that will lead into earning a degree. What is wrong in maybe introducing yourself? I'm so and so from the department of this or that. But I am embarking on my project report for my MSc in this particular area. But I'm requesting that you supply this information to me that will help me to complete my program, do my analysis, and then get my project done. That every information that you have provided to me, that all will be kept confidential. And the moment you say that, oftentimes this introductory note should be signed by the researcher. It should be signed. At the end, there should be maybe the name so and so. You sign it so that the person will know that we are the one that has written this. And the essence of that, it is both ways, even for you that you are means is that information for keep it confidential. And God, you have committed the number of questions must be as small as possible. I have not seen any research or survey that someone has embarked upon and the person is paying the respondents. Such may exist. There may be incentives. I'm not doubting that, especially when it has to do with maybe village women, local women. As we are going to the field, you may decide to go with one thing or the other. Is that clear? But I'm saying in the best practice, the respondents are not paid. Do you understand? Because they are not paid, you will give me a questionnaire that maybe 1, 2, 3, and you give it to me and ask me to please. But tomorrow, when I remember it, no, later I will fill it. Another time I will pick it, I will count it. Maybe I will fill the first 1, 2, 3 on the first page. I will check the remainder. I say I will complete it next time. It may continue like that, and I will eventually not fill it. Because of the fact that I know that I'm not paying my respondents. As a result, I should be able to save their time. And not only saving their time, I should be able to help them to do what? To have the intention, the mind, and the willingness to finish it. So because of that, I should make the questions as small as possible. It does not equally mean that if I see any question that will help me in my research, I will say, because the questions will need to be as small as possible, let me cut down the questions I need for my research. I'm sure we understand that. All the questions that are relevant for me in my research, they must be there. That's why I say as small as possible. So the much you can do by reducing the number of questions, make it so that your respondents will have the mind to fill the questionnaire. There are some questionnaires that you may come to someone to give to, and you are telling the person, I don't know when I will come back to collect it. The person will look at it and say, why don't you just sit down and let me complete it? And you see that the person will just complete it and give it back to you. Do you understand that? That person has said so because he has looked at it. It may be 1 or 2 page questionnaire, and the person says, maybe highest 5 minutes and through it. So that person will just need to immediately and give to you. But if you make it too bulky, you are likely going to have several cases of non-response, and which is not good. So number 3 is each question should be short and simple. You make questions to be short, straight to the point, short and very simple. Ambiguous words should be avoided. Words that may not mean the same thing, which 2 or 3 persons have they look at, they will have different meanings out of it. You should try to avoid such, so that because the whole essence of it is for you to get the correct information you are looking for. If you ask questions that are ambiguous, Mr. A that is filling the questionnaire, we feel it according to his own understanding of that question. Mr. B will feel the same thing according to his own understanding, and both of them may be talking 2 different things altogether because they have understood the same question differently. So we try to make it as simple as possible. But there are questions that may require technical words that maybe the respondents may not understand. Such questions, you try to do what? You try to do a little explanation. You might say, that is, you put something, and that thing you have put may help someone, for better words, understanding. Now, questions that pry into people's privacy should be avoided as much as possible. There are, we know, so many questions that when you're asking someone, you will know that you have crossed your bounds, that you are going into privacy. So such questions should be avoided as much as possible. I'm not saying there are some researches that one may want to be doing that he cannot avoid private questions. But if it is such, I'm not saying that such a question should not be asked, because that is the center of your research. It should be asked. But then, it is not when maybe such a question is not needed. We are just asking questions for asking sake, random questions. Such questions should be avoided, so that you will be able to get needed information you are looking for. For instance, you want to conduct a research, maybe about workers in a hospital, and you are asking them how much they are earning every month. And then somebody sees it, and you have, even though you have written that it is for you to gain your MSc or PhD, that person has noted it. So why must you ask me how much I earn a month? And because of it is you are going into someone's privacy. And because of that, that person may be tempted. There are options, things that you may see there. Number one person may just jump to that question and fill other ones and give it to you. Another person will say, well, if the person is free, that person will do what? Will lower it, oftentimes lower it, so that you will not know the actual value of that person. Some other times, depending on the nature of the research and the nature of the person, some other persons may want to do what? May want to, how do I put it? May want to package himself. You know there is packaging. Yes. Someone may want to package himself. Someone that is earning maybe 50,000 every month will say, how can I tell someone I'm earning 50,000 somehow? And the person will look at, maybe that person used to respect me, and the person will just lower the standard. And because of that, I need to package. So, let's say that you are earning 250,000, 300, so that you will earn your respect. And by doing so, you find out that they are not getting you. You are the researcher. You are the one that will suffer you because you are getting the wrong information. And we know all of those things. Especially you who deal with you who work in the hospitals. You deal with women a lot. Women has a lot of privacy. And you are coming to ask a woman questions on sexuality and things like that. It is possible you look at you may not want to answer you. I'm sure you understand. So we'll try to, as much as possible, we try to avoid such private questions. But where it is the center of our research, we cannot avoid it. But still, when it is not, when it cannot be avoided, you can put it. You still find a way. You can find a way and make it lighter. I don't know if you understand. Just find a way. Wisdom is important. You find a way to make it lighter in such a way that someone will see it and see that yes, it is something I can have. The reason is because if you get the wrong information, that is the worst thing that can happen to someone in research. You have wrong data sets. You will analyze it. You may come up with a wonderful result. But that wonderful result does it represent the population that you have studied? No. You have just come up with a very wonderful thing that is on paper that does not translate to what you see in reality. It will be the case of like Nigeria's economic policies. You know they have wonderful economic policies. They will they can come to a workshop like this and we use graphs to show the economic growth of Nigeria. You understand that in 2021, Nigeria's pace was like this. It came down like this. But in this year, 2025, look at where it has reached to. That thing doesn't translate to what you see on ground. It doesn't translate. So it is just like a very wonderful piece of work that somebody has done, which is presented, and it looks very fine on paper, but it doesn't translate to what people see on ground. It's very important. Leading questions should be avoided. What do you mean by leading questions? When you're asking someone a question and they tell someone, don't you think that this is like this? You understand? You have led the person into an answer. The person will tell you, yes, you are right. The person will put what you want. So you are trying to avoid leading questions. Questions that will suggest an answer to someone. You will try to avoid it. Because it takes very few that it equally works in two ways. You may suggest an answer to someone, and the person will say, yes, since this is what you want, I give it to you. Another set of people, you suggest an answer, the person will say, for the fact that we have suggested this answer, I will not agree with it. The person must disagree. You understand? So it is better to make it as objective as possible, so that the person will be able to choose what is best for him or her. The next one is that offensive, so the highly emotional questions should be avoided as much as possible. Highly emotional questions. I've used this example before. Maybe you are carrying out a research on maybe women, and one of the questions should be, it may even be widows, for instance, and you're asking someone a question that will make the person remind the person of how he lost or how she lost her husband. You understand? It is possible that the person is feeling it from getting to that point. The person looks at it, and before you know, that person is shedding tears. That question cannot be completed. The questionnaire cannot be completed. You understand? So we try to avoid such questions as much as possible. And again, the questionnaire should guide the respondents into questions with possible open-ended answers. The questionnaire should guide the respondents into questions with possible open-ended answers. There are questions that are open-ended, while there are questions that have structured answers. For instance, if you're asking someone his age, Age ordinary is an open-ended question. Is it not so? First, you can guide the respondent by categorizing the age. You understand? By categorizing the age, you have helped the respondents to answer that open-ended question. And even in that case of maybe like you want to ask the workers how much they earn every month, it is a private question and it has open-ended answer. But you can guide them by categorizing it. By the time you have grouped it, someone may likely give you the correct answer. After all, it is not the actual amount at earning. 50,000 to from more than 100,000 to 200,000, maybe above 200,000. Someone that is earning 140,000 will just pick that's between more than 100 and less than 200. I'm sure it's clear. After all, you don't know the actual amount I earn. The person will help you to put the correct answer. So, these are very important good qualities of a well-designed question. Okay, with that, we move to observation method. Okay.
It's concerning this questionnaire. Most of the time, people bring questionnaire for me to fill. And when you start to fill, for instance, it's like they have a mindset already. For instance, somebody wants to study the standards of education in this school, and they now they want to study the MSc, the standard of MSc. So maybe the person has already in mind that the standard day is not good. They will say, okay, satisfied, not satisfied. Then they will now leave the not satisfied and follow every other question is following the other to give a conclusion that you see that yourself you are not fit. In that case, are you supposed to continue to fill that questionnaire or you stop?
Okay. We are not asking questions and filling questionnaire, but that's not what we are doing here. What we are doing here is
somebody that is
hold on now, hold on. We are not quarreling. Are we? But what we are doing here is guiding ourselves on how to construct a good questionnaire.
If you they will say that they will put the source of that questionnaire that they have downloaded to use and do this. But the second question is it that every questionnaire that we see on the internet that is like related to our work, we will use it like that? Do we have the right to adjust some things to suit our work?
Yes. Have you not finished?
I finished.
You didn't tell me that you have finished. You only told me that you have not finished. Okay, let's go on. Starting from where you started. It is because of that what we have read that we are looking at this. It is possible we don't actually know the objective of the research. Okay? It is possible that such a person's objective it has nothing to do with the people that are satisfied. That everything he is studying is the dissatisfaction of people about the program. So the bulk of his questions will be on the part of dissatisfied respondents. Is that clear? But the only thing the person, from what we have said, the only thing the person failed to do is to say satisfied or I'm not satisfied. The person did not say, if not satisfied, then answer the following questions. That is the only thing the person did not put there. Do you understand? But saying satisfied, not satisfied, and the person now drops the case of satisfied and continues in the direction of not satisfied is not correct. You should be able to lead the respondents by saying, if not satisfied, then answer questions, maybe 9, 10, and the rest till the end. So that that person is actually looking for the satisfied people. So at the end of the day, what eventually will be the bulk of the person's result analysis will be on the dissatisfied individuals. The only thing the person will present is that maybe frequency, that out of a sample size of 300, maybe 92 we are satisfied, 208 we are not satisfied. Now, the objectives will now be on those ones that were not satisfied, and we will now continue that way. Is that clear? That may be the intention of that researcher, that the person did not guide the people that are filling the questionnaire, so that they will know that if they are satisfied, that their case has been closed. Do you understand that? So, having answered that one, the next question you ask, I will come to you. The next question you ask is on, can you remind me again? Okay, good, okay. You know, there are some disciplines that work a lot with what they call scale. If you go to a department like psychology, you cannot do any research without getting a scale for your research. Is that clear? And to them, they believe that whatever thing you want to study, that there is a standard scale for it. Get that standard scale and use it. Maybe you want to study maybe sleeping habits. Someone has done sleeping habit scale, and it is there. Sometimes it is normally sold, and some other times you may see it free online. And for you to be able to do it, do this your work, they will tell you, get that scale and use. The reason is because that such a scale has passed through tests and is certified to be what? Adequate. Do you understand? Is that clear? Now, the second leg of your question now is a question that is in that scale, which is not part of what you are studying. If you leave it in that scale, you will be punishing your respondents. Do you understand? Because when you have allowed them to fill all of them, when it is returned to you, you will now sieve out the ones you want to use that are relevant to the work we are doing at the moment. So the rest that are not relevant to you, you will discard them. Do you understand? So, having said that, what it implies is that there is nothing wrong in adapting an already a questionnaire that is already in existence. There is nothing wrong in adapting it to a research you are doing. Adapting it simply means remove anything that is there which is not necessary, and ask your students, your respondents, questions on the ones that you want to include in your research. Is that clear? Yes. But when you are doing that instead, it is equally important because you have mentioned that such a questionnaire is already in existence and it is known. So if you are going to do adaptation, it's equally important when you are discussing the instrument of your study. You should be what? You should be able to mention it, that you adapted it to your own study, so that somebody will know that you did not use it whole and entire. Is that clear? Yes.
So we appreciate my question borders on saying the number of questions should be as small as possible. A student who was studying the phenomenon actually clustered the questionnaire into 5 sections. And one section the person said up to 10 questions. So times 5 clusters.
That's 50 questions.
Yes, 50 questions. And the supervisor would write that you have not been exhaustive enough. That is, you would have exploded and added more questions into the cluster. So, in such a case, the respondent will have to answer up to maybe 70 or 80 questions. So, when you say it should be as small as possible. So, in such a case, that your supervisor is compelling you to write 20 questions, what will you do?
Okay, thank you. Does the supervisors compare? It's good that we use maybe I don't know how to we use right words because I will not stand here and believe that supervisors compare. Supervisors are there to guide the students, and because they are there to guide, sometimes they know what is best for the student in any particular situation, and they will have to guide that student that you need to do it this way because that is what is the best thing that you need to do as it concerns this your work. So when we use the word compelling, that word compelling is to me is derogatory to the supervisor because they are not meant to compare. When I say that the supervisor is compelling, if somebody sees such a supervisor, then the person will not be happy with that supervisor. Okay, having said that, I will now answer your question. Um, what I said is the number of questions should be as small as what possible. What do you make out of as small as possible? Okay, let me go further to complete it. What it means is this: as small as you can, your questionnaire can contain for the research you are doing, make the questions to be that. But whereby you are doing an exhaustive research that involves this, involves that, involves this, involves that. Because of that, you cannot shorten the number of questions that you need to ask in the name of making the number of questions to be small. Because anyone that is not present in that questionnaire, you will suffer it in your analysis because maybe there is a hypothesis or an objective in your work that that particular question is meant to answer. When you don't have it in the questionnaire, then your work is inconclusive. Do you understand? But as much as possible, as much as it can be. In other words, don't bring in unnecessary questions just for you to be able to do what? To fill space. That is the meaning of what I have said. Exactly. Experiment-based research. And for such a people, they use observation method to get their data. Okay, we are making progress, even though I don't know the speed. So we are making progress. Want to look at data analysis and interpretation. And what we have come to do is just a guide. We have not come to analyze any data. Because we don't have any data to analyze. Did you hear what I'm saying? Before you will want to analyze data. There's no data to analyze. Healthcare will be elicited from such data unless they are subjected to statistical means of doing that. And these statistical means are known as data analysis. That is statistical means of getting whatever information that one needs from a simple which in other way around, there are different statistical methods or techniques that can be used to analyze data, two, on the objective of the research, and so on. So, descriptives, I have explained what they are. Proportions, I have equally explained what they are. The only thing is that I have not told us that there are different types of proportions, tests of proportions. We can test with single proportion. We can test for difference of two proportions. We can as well test for difference of several proportions. And even in terms of difference of several proportions, that is where we have what we call chi-square test. Tests of difference of several proportions. But this chi-square test, there are two types of chi-square test. One is chi-square test of independence. The other is chi-square goodness of fit test. Two of them are being a chi-square test, but they are used to do two different things. In goodness of fit test, what we are trying to do is to see if maybe to see if the proportion of groups, if they conform to a known standard. You understand what I'm saying? What that means? For instance, I will use a very trivial example. In 2006 census, national census, we were told that males in Nigeria were 50-something percent, while females were 40-something percent. Is it true?
Yes.
Why did you say no? What I'm not asking you to argue it. What I'm saying is it true that that was what the 2006 census said? So that is exactly what the 2006 census reported, that we will have more males in Nigeria than females. Now, I don't know, I can't remember the actual values, but let us assume that those actual values is 5.5, that 55% of Nigerians are males, while the remaining 45% are females. Let's assume that. So, somebody knows that as a standard, that the proportion of males is 0.55, while proportion of females is 0.45. And the person comes to a particular locality. If that person is doing a research that involves gender, and he wants to check if the gender distribution of that locality, if it conforms to the standard which 2006 census of Nigeria has given to us. You get what I'm saying? That person will count the number of males in that locality based on his sample size and the number of females. And that person is now comparing that with that standard that 2006 census has given. When one is doing that, it is chi-square goodness of fit test. We are trying to check if this we have seen, if it fits very well to something that is established. Is that understood? That is the chi-square goodness of fit test. The next one is chi-square test of independence. When one is doing a dependent test, then the person may be interested in looking at maybe this particular, let us assume that somebody has come up with a case to say that maybe occurrence of a particular disease is dependent on the blood group of the individual. Let's assume that. Okay? So, somebody has gone into the field to collect data who have that particular disease. And that person is now trying to test the goodness of, independence, to now check if it is true. Is it true that the incidence of this particular disease is dependent on what? On blood group. Is that clear? Assuming there are maybe 4 blood groups, what the person will now be doing is the number of those. Let us assume that in the field, the sample size the person is using, that 100 persons have that particular disease. And there is a distribution of these 100 persons according to blood group. And that person is checking, does this actually depend on the blood? I hope it's clear. In such a situation, that person will get the number that belongs to this particular blood group, the number that belongs to the other, the number that belongs to the other, and so on. And the person is now testing it using chi-square to check if these proportions differ or if they are the same. If they differ significantly, then one will now be able to say that these differences in their distribution is actually as a result of what? Blood group. Which means that this particular blood group, that people have what? More tendency of suffering from this particular disease because of that particular blood group. Do you understand? While some people of this particular blood group, they seldom suffer from this particular disease. I hope it's clear. But if there is no significant difference, what it means is that though the numbers of the people that are suffering from this disease may not be the same according to maybe with respect to body group, but those differences are simply simply what are there by chance that it is not significant, which means that body group does not what to affect that particular disease. I hope it's clear. In this particular type of test, it is chi-square test of independence. So basically, whether it is goodness or fit, whether it is independence, chi-square, what it does is that it tests what several proportions. It is a test of several proportions. Okay? Yes.
This test of independence, we also say it might be test of relationship or relation.
No. It's not a correlation test.
Please explain.
I will do that. Correlation test. Remember I talked about here proportion. Correlation test uses measured values. Huh? Do I need to explain it further?
Yes, sir.
First of all, like when I was talking of this chi-square test, I was talking of just groupings. Then I have used the example of blood group. Assuming there are 4 blood groups, okay? All that I needed to do is to group all those people that are suffering from that disease based on their what? Blood group. When I have done that, I will be able to get proportion of those suffering from this disease from this blood group, proportion of those suffering from this disease that are from this blood group, and so on to the rest. You understand? So it is a proportion that I have. So when I'm testing chi-square test of independence, you will find out that it is, there is no measurement. You did not maybe measure something that is a value. What we have done is just that we have grouped. And when you finish grouping, you're able to do what? Obtain their proportions. Is that clear? But when we are talking of correlation, correlation doesn't test the proportions. Correlation tests what? Measure the values. For instance, if one is looking at if there is a way of measuring maybe severity of such sickness, and the person begins to measure, maybe this person scored 2.3, this person scored 8.1, this person scored 7.2. The values you are going to see are what? Those measurements. They are the data set that will be plugged into correlation test or correlation measure. Do you understand? So, correlation is, yes, we understand that it can be used to measure independence, okay, or dependence of variables. But it uses what? Real measurements. It is when you have measurements that you can do correlation. If you don't have measurements and we are testing for independence by simply grouping, which in other words, chi-square test is a test of independence for what? For a qualitative data. While correlation is still a measure of independence. From where? From a quantitative data. Do you understand? Chi-square doesn't make use of quantitative data. You don't measure anything and you use it as a data set to do chi-square. What you do is number of individuals. You group them. When you have grouped them, you get the proportions from each of them. And each of them, that those proportions you are now testing, whether those proportions are the same or whether they differ. Do you understand? That is the chi-square test. But in correlation may be measured. We have real values that we are now testing, using real values to check if the variables from where those real values are coming from, if they depend on each other or if they don't depend on each other. Have I answered your question? Okay.
I'm so confused about this test of goodness of it.
Okay.
I don't really know how they to differentiate between independent test of independence and goodness of it.
This question has led me to shoot down. Because I don't know, with all the explanations I gave, I like further explanation.
I didn't get it well. Maybe you explain the reason.
I said, and I want to say it here, that chi-square goodness of fit test is normally used to test tests of several proportions according to a pattern, an established pattern. Okay? According to an established pattern. There is a pattern that is established, which is known in the literature. You have gone to the field, you have collected data, then from the data you have your own pattern from the data. You want to match that data, the pattern that you obtained from the field with the one that is what? That is an established pattern. And you're trying to check if the one you got from the field conforms to that established pattern. Is it understood now? So when you are doing that, it is chi-square goodness of fit test. There is an established pattern. Sometimes you may be reading something, you say according to WHO, that this is like this. There is an established pattern according to WHO. Do you understand? But when you go to the field, it is possible there will be a violation from that established pattern. So, in testing to check if what we have seen in the field, according to the population you are studying, does it conform to that WHO pattern, or does it deviate from that WHO pattern? If the data that we have used to build the pattern, if they are proportional value, then it is chi-square test goodness of fit test that can be used to marry two of them to see if they are the same or if there is a deviation. That is chi-square goodness of fit test. Is this understood now? Thank God. So tests involving means. So we have, just as we have different tests involving proportions, we have different tests involving means. Like the test involving just a single mean. How do I mean? Somebody may go to the field and say that the average age of suffering from a particular disease is this. Do you understand? I don't know, does it make sense to us?
Yes.
Good. And you are now testing, you go to the field and collect data. In other words, you'll be asking them, those that are suffering from that disease, when did this start? When did this start? And they will be telling you, how old were you when this particular problem started? And they are telling you. At the end of the day, you are now trying to do what? You are trying to test to know if that hypothesis somebody has maybe hypothesized before, that the average age of suffering from this disease maybe is from 55 years. In other words, that if someone is not up to 55 years, that person is not a candidate of that particular sickness. Do you understand? Yes. When you now collect data, you will be testing to know if the data you have, if you support that hypothesis or if you refuse it. It is possible that at the end of the day, you will see from the data that you have that some people started suffering from that same disease when they were 40 years, when they were 30-something years. Do you understand? At the end of the day, what does it mean? What it means is that particular hypothesis is actually not true. You have refuted the hypothesis. Do you understand? So that is test of involving a single need. There can even be tests involving difference of two means. We are checking two means, whether they are the same or whether they differ. Then the last one is test involving several means. We are trying to check if these means, severality of means begins from 2, is it not so? 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and so on. If these means, whether they are the same or whether they differ. And that is what we know as analysis of variance. What analysis of variance does is that we test for what? It is a test involving several means. We equally have tests involving variances, where we have tests involving a single variance and tests involving two different, maybe difference between two variances. So these are different tests. Sometimes maybe if someone is conversant with maybe something like if someone is a conversant with something like test involving two means, difference of two means, there is a test, a pre-test that is always done for one to know which method to use. A test involving difference of two means that is called a divine test. Divine test for equality of variances. Okay, maybe don't worry about that. So what I was trying to say is that one can test difference of variances, or one can test variance if a particular variance is what has been hypothesized. So these are tests involving variances. There are two of them. Tests involving single variance and tests involving difference of two variances. What I have here are just graphical methods of presenting data. What I have presented here is just a histogram which can be used to give a picture of the data set that we have, especially when it appears that what everybody knows that has ever done research knows that that is normal distribution. Do we know what is called normal distribution? And do we know the shape of a normal distribution?
Yes.
Good.
No.
You say you don't know?
Yes.
The person by your side knows. Ask her. We know that the normal distribution, okay, has what the scale say that it has a bell shape. Good. It has a bell shape because it is symmetrical about what? The center. So, you can have a history, you are trying to check if the data set you have, does it have that picture of a bell shape or not? If something doesn't have a picture of the normal distribution, maybe that thing is skewed. I hope it's clear. Skewed means either that the peak is to the right or that the peak is to the left. But the normal distribution has the peak at the center, where it continues uniformly moving down until it gets to 0. So you may use something like a histogram to check if the data that you have, if it is actually following the normal distribution or not. Then this is just another one, and we equally know this as what? That is the OP. It's the cumulative frequency graph. While this one is what we call frequency polygon. There are various ways we can present our data graphically. This one is what we equally know very well as the pie chart. While this one is what we equally know as the what? As the bar chart. Now, when we have done all of those things, we look at the general steps involved in conducting tests of hypothesis. General steps involved in conducting tests of hypothesis. Number one step, because once we have our data, we must analyze them. And the first type of analysis is the descriptive analysis, where we will put something like the frequency distribution and so on, after which we can have their graphs, the frequency table, the frequency graph, the cumulative frequency graph, and so on. So when we have finished all of them, we can now do tests of hypothesis. That is where the research maybe becomes better, because you cannot ordinarily use descriptive statistics to make generalization for a population. Is that clear? The only thing that we give you, we make you to make generalizations about a population is when you have conducted tests of hypothesis. So we want to give general steps for conducting tests of hypothesis of any kind. Number one is to state the null hypothesis. So one must state the null hypothesis. And what is null hypothesis? It is usually stated to show non-significant results. Maybe you are trying to test the significance of something. The null should be that that thing is what? Not significant. So also the effort that is made in the entire test of hypothesis is to reject it. The test of hypothesis is built with the intention of rejecting a null hypothesis. That's what is done in test of hypothesis. The moment we have stated a null hypothesis, every single idea in test of hypothesis is to do what? Is to reject it. It is when you have rejected it that you will be able to do what? You will be able to take the other one. But at the end of the day, you may succeed in not being able to reject it. Is that clear? And if you are not able to reject it, what it means is that it cannot be rejected. Which means the other one is actually may not be true. Is that clear? So the first step in every step of hypothesis is to state the null hypothesis. And when I will not go into this example, but it is important what I have said that I have said it. The next step is to, of course, when you have stated the null hypothesis, any other thing that negates the null hypothesis is what? Is the alternative hypothesis. And we choose an appropriate alternative hypothesis in line with the direction of our research. How do I mean? If I have said, maybe I am trying to check what I have said before, that the mean age, therefore, someone has hypothesized the mean age of suffering from a particular ailment is maybe 55 years. So, if somebody is doing a research and wants to refute that, so that the person will be able to say that it is not 55 years. So the null hypothesis should be that it is not what 55 years. While the alternative, so the null hypothesis should be, yes, that it is 55 years. While the alternative will now be that it is not. Then this alternative hypothesis, there are three types of alternative hypothesis. One is alternative hypothesis that points to the left, which is a test of hypothesis we call the left tail test. While there is an alternative hypothesis that points to the what? To the right, which we call the right tail test. There is equally an alternative hypothesis that points to both the right and the left. So let me conclude this. I have made mention of left tail test, right tail test, and the two tail test. Two tails is when it can point to the left, it can point to the right. Like what I said, the null hypothesis is that the mean age of suffering from that element is 55 years. Someone may be repeating it that it is not up to 55 years, which means it is what? The alternative will be that it is less than 55 years. Another person may come up again that it is more than, it cannot be 55, it is surely more than 55. So the alternative hypothesis will be what? That it is more than 55. Someone will say it cannot be 55. It can be any other thing that not what? 55. In such a situation, the appropriate alternative will be what? It is not equal to 55, which means it can be less than 55, it can be more than 55. So when we have obtained the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, the next step is to determine the level of significance for the study. And I have said that it is the maximum probability of committing the error of type 1. And what is the error of type 1? The error of type 1, I have said there are two errors we commit when we are doing tests of hypothesis. There are type 1 error and type 2 error. What is type 1 error? It is the error of rejecting a true null hypothesis. A null hypothesis that is not meant to be rejected, that is actually not supposed to be rejected. If at the end of the day, one goes out, that person has committed an error, and it is the error of type 1. There is the error of type 2, which is the error of not rejecting a wrong null hypothesis. A null hypothesis that is wrong, someone goes ahead not to do what? To reject it. In such a situation, the person has committed yet another error, which is the error of type 2. So in every test of hypothesis, we always state what? The level of significance, which is the maximum allowable error of type 1 that can be in the test of hypothesis. In other words, do we give, having known that type 1 error is the error of rejecting a true null hypothesis, what amount of the error can we allow in this test we are doing? And oftentimes, especially for a classroom work, we have the generic level of significance, which everybody knows as what? 5% or 0.05. So that is generic. It is a classroom level of significance. But that error, depending on the type of research we are doing, we can make it to be what? Different from that. The tighter, the smaller the level of significance, the tighter the test you are doing. Because some tests that will require that we should be of a high, should be highly sensitive. One can make the level of significance to be small so that the error will be reduced. Okay. The next is conduct a test using a given test statistic to obtain the p-value. We conduct now a test using a given test statistic to obtain the p-value. And when we have obtained the p-value, step 5 is to decide whether or not to reject the null hypothesis. And this is dependent on the value of the p-value that we have obtained. And we are going to decide that by making comparison. What are we going to be comparing? The p-value we have obtained and the level of significance we stated at the beginning. So at each point in time we are making decision in case of hypothesis, we are comparing two things, the level of significance and the p-value. Is that clear? Did you get what I said? Yes. Does it make sense to us? Huh? No. Did you get where I said that the next step is to obtain the p-value? Yes. Good. P-value is actually probability value. And what does it do? We have told us that we have level of significance with the maximum probability of committing type 1 error. Okay? Which we normally specify before we begin the test of hypothesis to say, let us test at maybe 5% level of significance. That is the maximum probability of what? Committing type 1 error. But when we are now computing, doing the computation using the test statistic, at the end we will obtain another level of significance. Is that clear? The first level of significance, which is what? alpha, which is 0.05, is what we know as the theoretical level of significance. Okay? The theoretical probability of committing the error of type 1. But from the test, using the test statistics, we are obtaining another level of significance, which is now another level of significance emanating from the data that we have. We call it what? The observed probability of committing type 1 error. Level of significance is the theoretical probability of committing type 1 error. If p-value is observed probability of committing type 1 error. Is that clear? We will now be comparing the theoretical with the what? The observed. I hope it's clear. That's what you have to do in making decision. And how do we, what is decision? If the observed value, which is the p-value that we have, if it is less than the level of significance, the observed value, observed level of significance, which is p-value, is less than the theoretical level of significance, which is what? Alpha. If it is less, it means what? That the null hypothesis should be rejected. I said that we will reject the null hypothesis if the p-value is less than the level of significance. Do you understand that?
Yes.
These are two probability values. We are just comparing them. If the observed one is smaller than the theoretical one, we reject the null hypothesis. Is that clear? But if it is not so, we don't have any reason to reject the null hypothesis. And that not being so means that they can be equal or that they can be greater. Do you understand? If p-value is equal to the level of significance, we don't have any reason to reject the null hypothesis. If the p-value is greater than the level of significance, we don't have any reason to reject the null hypothesis. So we only reject the null hypothesis when the p-value is less than the level of significance. Is that clear? So once we have noted that, we make our conclusion based on that comparison. And what is the conclusion? When we don't reject the null hypothesis, what it simply means is that that null hypothesis is what? It's true. So that is taken. Now I want to, there is a question that came from our participants that are online. And it says, in developing a questionnaire, can Likert scale yes or no questions and the multiple questions be used within the same questionnaire? And the answer is what? Yes. But in addition to being yes, yes or no doesn't go for the Likert scale. That is the only addition I want to put here. Yes or no is a nominal, produces nominal data. It cannot produce an ordinal data. Likert scale produces ordinal data. Do you understand what I mean? So, any question that has answers, yes or no, only produces a nominal data. It cannot produce an ordinal data. Therefore, it is not a Likert scale. That's clear. But the question I think I have attended to, that all of them can go together in the same question. The only thing is just the choice of word, using Likert scale for yes or no. It's important that I point it out. So, measures of association. And I said that these involve two aspects. They are namely regression analysis and the correlation. We know what regression analysis is. It's a measure that is used to determine the nature of relationship that exists among variables. That is what regression analysis does. We want to find the nature of the linear relationship that exists among variables. We can determine that using regression analysis. And the variables are usually one dependent variable, which is also known as the response variable, also known as the explained variable, which is also known as the regressor. There will be only one of these, and then we will have one or more than one independent variables, which may equally be known as predictors or predictor variables, which may equally be called explanatory variables, or which may equally be called the regressors, regressor or regressors. So in every regression analysis, there is always one dependent variable or response variable. While we can have one or more than one independent variables or variables. Now, when there is one independent variable, it is called a simple regression. And if it is not simple, it means it is what? A multiple regression. The relationships between the variables may be linear or non-linear. Of linear regression. Linear regression is when it is possible for one to see that the nature of the relationship that is between the response variable and the independent variable. The relationship is a straight line relationship. Then we can say that we have what? A linear relationship. But we know that it is not only linear, relationships always cannot be what? Linear. There are situations where we have non-linear relations, so non-linear relationships. So when we have a non-linear relationship, we say that we have a non-linear regression. So we can have linear regression and non-linear regression. And non-linear relationships may be polynomial. We may have a polynomial regression. We may have an exponential regression. We may have any other non-linear form. And whenever we have the non-linear form, for instance, logarithmic relationship or any other form at all, the when we have any of them, we say that we have a non-linear relationship. Now we can talk of a simple linear regression. It is when the relationship is linear and then we have only one independent variable. We say that we have what? Simple linear regression. We have an example of a simple linear regression. But I'm sorry, I will jump this so that we will continue the way we are going. Let me jump this. Let's forget about the formula and then so that we will jump it. But the only thing that is important is for us to look at the regression equation. This is the regression equation that we have obtained using the data that we have in the previous slide and using the formula we have in the two previous slides. We obtain this relationship. We are looking at the relationship between y as a variable and x as a variable. Where in the way they are presented here, y is the response variable or the dependent variable, which depends on what? On x, meaning that x is the independent variable. What it means is that the changes that we see in the y variable, they are being determined by what? Changes we see in x variable. So y is there waiting on what? On x. Any direction x moves will affect the direction of y. So when we have this, we say that we have this linear relationship, and it is simple. It is important that we interpret this result. We have the first term there, which is 29.845. This is what we know as the y-intercept or the constant. What it means is that it is the value of this response variable y that is not being contributed by what? By X variable. Is that clear? This up to 29.845 of this Y is not accounted for by what? By X. Does it make sense? So it is a constant. It is possible that there are some other variables that make or contribute to it to make it to be this value, but it is not this word X. And because it's not this X, it is a constant with respect to this X. So we call it constant or the Y-intercept. Now the next value there is this minus 2.711. Minus 2.711 is what we know as the slope of the regression line or the gradient. And what does it tell us? What it tells us is what? It measures the nature of this linear relationship. How steep is the linear relationship? How shallow is the linear relationship? That is exactly what it does. And it equally gives the direction of the nature of the linear relationship. Because we have seen minus here, what it means is that X variable and the Y variable are what? They have an inverse relationship. How do we know that? Because there is what? A minus value for this slope. The slope is a negative value. Whenever this slope is negative, it means that there is what? An inverse linear relationship. What it means is that as X is increasing, Y will be what? Increasing. And if X begins to decrease, Y will begin to what? Increase. That's the nature of the relationship between them. But if it is not so, assuming we have plus there, okay, what it will mean is that two of them are moving in the same direction. Anytime X begins to decrease, Y will follow suit and be decreasing. Anytime X begins to increase, Y will follow it and be increasing. That is determined by this sign that is here. But in the case we have an inverse relationship. Increase in X results in decrease in Y, and decrease in X results in increase in Y. That is the interpretation of that. Then the actual value, the 2.711, measures the steepness of the slope. Do you understand that? Whether it is just shallow this way, or whether it is moving like this, or whether it is like this, it is this value that determines this. It measures the slope, the steepness of the relationship that exists between them. So the interpretation I have given is that there is an inverse linear relationship between Y and X. Now the next one is the correlation. Correlation is defined as a measure of the degree of or extent of relationship between or among the variables. In regression analysis, it measures the nature of the relationship. Is that clear? But even when we have known the nature, we have not known the degree. So correlation determines the what? The degree of the relationship. That's what it measures. And we have different kinds of correlation. The first one is bivariate correlation. The next is partial correlation. We have multiple correlation and canonical correlation. But the one that concerns us amongst all of these is what? Bivariate correlation, which is correlation between two variables. That's the one that concerns us, and that is the only one I'm going to present. So the bivariate correlation is the correlation coefficient that exists between two variables. Maybe we call it variables X and Y, for instance, here. And let me equally say, at this point, that in determination of the extent of linear relationship that exists between variables, we don't make use of dependence or independence. Is that clear? It is only in regression analysis that we say that this variable is a dependent variable, while this one is an independent variable. That is in regression. But in correlation, we don't talk of dependence and independence. Is that clear? All that we are looking at is that we have maybe two variables, and we are checking if there is any degree of relationship, if they relate with each other. Relating with each other could mean that two of them depend on each other. That this one, the results of this one affect the other, and the results of the other affect this one. It can as well mean that one depends on the other. But correlation analysis has nothing to do with dependence and independence. So it is not mentioned or defined in correlation analysis. So there are basically two methods of determining or computing correlation coefficient that exist between variables. The first one is the Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient. That was due to Carl Pearson. He obtained the formula for finding the correlation coefficient between two variables. While the second one is the Spearman's rank correlation coefficient. This one, the first one makes use of the what? The real value, measure the value. I remember when I was asking, somebody asked a question, I was trying to give an answer to that. Why, whether correlation and the measure of chi-square of independence, if they are the same. I said that yes, that correlation coefficient measures what? Uses the measure the value. Let's say so. Now, talking about the use of the measure the value, it is actually the Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient that uses measure the value. You have another one, which is called in statistics. We have two areas of statistics. One is called the parametric statistics, the other is non-parametric statistics. It doesn't concern us. I'm only trying to use it to explain something here. That in these two, Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient is a parametric correlation coefficient, while Spearman's rank correlation coefficient is a non-parametric correlation coefficient. How is it non-parametric? Because it doesn't make use of the real value. It measures the value, it doesn't make use of it. Instead of doing that, it resorts to the word ranking the value, and it will now use the ranks to determine the correlation coefficient. Is that clear? Once it sees the values, it will leave the values and then go to the ranks of the value. The ranking will mean to maybe to order those values according to maybe maybe in ascending order or in descending order. In other words, we come to the values of x. We are looking for the smallest value. The smallest value will take 1. The second smallest value will take 2. The third smallest value will take 3. Assuming there are 20 of them, until the highest value will take 20. Is that clear? We go to y and we will do what? We will do the same order. Spearman's rank correlation coefficient now comes from the point that if these two variables, if they depend on each other, if there is some kind of dependence that exists amongst them, it is expected that the ordering of these two, the ranks of these two variables should be what? Should be somewhat the same. You understand that? That the one that is the smallest here should be almost the same one that is smallest in the other one. That the highest one in the other one should almost be the same highest in the other one. That is the idea that Spearman came up with and made him to obtain a correlation coefficient that is based on ranks instead of on the actual value. The two of them are two important correlation coefficients. We have the third one, which I will not even discuss. That one was developed by one of the statisticians we had many years ago, by Kendall, and it is called the Kendall star. And that is another correlation coefficient. But I will just leave it on that one. In other words, there are 3 different measures of correlation coefficient. One is the Spearman's rank correlation coefficient, 2 is the Pearson's product moment correlation coefficient, and the 3rd is the Kendall star. 3 of them measure correlation coefficient. It's important that I say at this point that correlation values range between -1 to 1. Correlation values range between -1 and 1. If we are measuring the correlation coefficient between two variables, I cannot get any value that is below -1. I cannot get any value that is greater than 1. It hovers between -1 and 1. And when it is close to 1, we will say that there is what? Perfect positive or perfect direct relationship When it is close to -1, we will say that there's what? Perfect inverse or perfect negative relationship between the variables. When it is close to 0.5, maybe when it is close to 0.5, we will say that there is moderate perfect, so there is moderate direct relationship between the variables. And when it is close to -0.5, we say that there is moderate negative relationship between the variables. And when it is close to 0, from either end, we say that there is what? There is a weak relationship that exists between the variables. If it is close to 0 from the right, that is, it is a positive value that is close to 0, we will say that there is what? A weak positive relationship. When it is close to 0 from negative side, we will say that there is what? A weak inverse relationship between the variables. That's about correlation coefficient. Yes. Can it be?
For instance, when we do reliability test, there is what we call test retest and split half. I don't know how that can be related to this.
Okay. Because you know that they are related. That's why you are asking. It can be used to test for reliability. Like when you talked about test retest, what you are actually testing is you are measuring the correlation between them. How do I mean? You have you have a kind of a set of values which you have obtained, and after that you get another set of observations, okay, and you are trying to check if there is consistency. Definitely, if you compute the correlation coefficient, there should be a perfect direct relationship between them, and that shows that there is what? Consistency. You understand? But where you now test it and you see a very weak relationship, it simply means that consistency is lacking. You understand? So that is where it comes in. Correlation coefficient can be used to test for consistency because it is in test retest. When you have done obtain that set of observations, you do again and obtain another set of observations. If there is a consistency, it is expected that the values you obtained in the first time should be almost the same with the values you obtained in the second time. To the extent that when you compute this correlation, it should be perfect. It should be close to 1. You understand? But whereby, that is why, if maybe you do it and you get a value of something like 0.92, then there is a perfect consistency, meaning that the instrument is okay. You understand? But if you now, when you test it and you get a value of maybe 0.312, you understand? It is weak. Why? Because there is no, it lacks internal consistency. There is no consistency in that. And that instrument will need to be looked at again to be sure that it is okay. Okay. How many minutes do we have left? What was the rest? How many minutes do we have left? Let me know how to go.
We're meant to stop by 4.
By 4 p.m. Okay. So I'm going to go through a few things and then we will you will permit me to go. So maybe in 10 minutes or thereabout, we will stop. When you have done analysis, you have finished the analysis, right? Are we together?
Yes.
We will need to report all that we have done. What we submit is not the research. Is it true? Have we ever seen research submitted anywhere? What is submitted is the report. The report of the research that one has done. And that is the last thing that we have come to look at. Reporting research findings in an MSc project report or a PhD thesis. And we need to look at the main features. There are so many features, and these features depend on department or on faculty. I am sure that if I pick an MSc project report from this faculty, it may not be exactly the same with the one that we have in my own faculty. Do you understand that? So it depends on department, it depends on field, it depends on faculty. But there are things that are common to all of them. And those ones that are common to all of them, they are the ones we have come to look at. Number one is that there should be a background of the study. Number two is that there should be a statement of the program or program statement, whichever way it is titled in a faculty. Number three, that there should be aim and objectives of the study. There should be significance of the study. There should be literature review. Even though it is expected that the literature has been reviewed before the topic was obtained. But yes, they will have reviewed. But at this point in time, it needs to be what? Documented here. What we are talking about here is documentation of those literature that has been what? Reviewed before. So the next is that there should be research methodology. Next is that there should be analysis results and discussion of results. There should be conclusion and recommendation, and there should be references. I hope it's clear. But it is not, I said, but not limited to them. It's not limited to these ones. And now, other ones now depends on what? On how each faculty reports their own. And I will not tell you to report your own the way my faculty reports their own. Neither will I go to my faculty and tell them that I went to faculty of health sciences and I saw how they are reporting their own. Therefore, all of you should begin to report your own this way, that way. But it is important that these are the key components of the reporting. The background of the study I want to say a few things about that. It serves as a foundation to understanding of medical research, and it defines the roadmap to the leaders. It gives a foundation. It's very important, and it explains where the research journey started by providing the history and the why it is worth studying, and it relates the current research to the existing knowledge. That is the background of the study. The next is statement of the program. It is this that gives credence to the need for embarking on the research. When there is no statement of the program in a research report, somebody will be asking, what is this person doing? I hope it's understood. The only thing that makes someone to say, yes, that this thing that this person did is worth doing, is the what? Statement of the program. It is there that the gap that the person has found out when we were doing show review, it is there that the gap will be what? Will be made known to whoever that is going to read. So it simply defines the research gap in a clear manner, and it is stated in such a manner that it renders the existing body of knowledge insufficient without it. In other words, it is here in the statement of the program that one will begin to see the deficiencies that exist in the previous works that are done, and thereby seeing the need for your own research to be done. And it is a short and clear explanation of the program that needs urgent attention. The aim and objectives of the study we know very well. The aim is the general goal of the research. It is a broad statement that describes the overall purpose of your study, and it provides a general direction for your study, and it indicates the intended achievements of your research. That is what the aim of the study does. The aim always goes in line with the topic of the study. If you see the aim of a study and you see the topic of the study, they are almost what? Similar. They are almost the same, except that maybe few things may be changed in the case of the topic, the title of the work, for one to be able to see it as a title. In other words, what it is presenting is what? The aim of the work. Now, the research objectives are specific, measurable and achievable goals that you aim to accomplish within a specified time frame. They break down the research aim into smaller and more manageable components. That is what the research objectives do. They are just various aspects of what you need to do in order to do what? In order to accomplish the aim. The next is significance of the program. I said that this is a statement of impact of the research. One will now begin to ask, you want to do this, that is fine. Why do you need to do it? It is here in the significance of the program that it should be provided. It is the very rationale for the study. And it is not just the importance of the study, but explains how the study will benefit the field. In other words, significance of the study measures more on the what? On the benefits that the field will derive from the study that you want to do. In other words, it describes how the work has contributed to the field and how it will inform future studies and progress research. That is the significance of the study. And after the significance of the study, okay, the next that is contained here. Sorry, let me say. Okay, we will not need to talk about future review because everybody that is doing research will know that. We don't need to talk about that. Research methodology as a chapter, we don't need to talk about that because it has to do with the both the sampling frame, the research design, and the methods of analysis that should be used. That is what is contained in the research methodology. In the analysis, we now go straight. Those methods that we must have applied in the methodology, we go into the analysis and apply them and get the results. And when we have got results, we discuss those results as the consensus, maybe what we have done, so that readers will be able to see what we have done. And when we have finished discussing them, we make a conclusion of all that we have done and then make recommendations. That is all about that. And after that, we can now talk about the references. Time will not permit us, but I'm sure that it is going to be shared. The slides will be shared to us. I want us to take time to look at the references and the introduction to citation and referencing, what they are. What are citation and referencing? As I said, there are two sides of the same coin, used to refer to the process of acknowledging the sources used in an academic research. I have said it before, that it is what? It is an academic form to use a source in a research without acknowledging the source. It's an academic form, and it is punishable, except that in this part of the world, like I have said before, many things happen and nothing, anything goes. But if it is elsewhere, you use you use a source without referencing it, without acknowledging it, you can harm someone. bargain for. And they allow the reader of the work to easily identify those substitutes. As individuals or organizations. Number two is the date, which is the date of publication of the research output or date of retrieving the material for online information. Number three is the title, which is the title of the work as given by the author or authors at the point of publication. Sometimes you may have looked at your work and you feel that the title is not adequate. And maybe when you want to reference it, you may change the title. It's not supposed to be so. The title that the author has given it is what must appear. Then the last is the source, which includes the journal name, the volume number, the issue number, the page numbers, the publisher, the place of publication, the website, as well as the DOR. Maybe the last thing I will say about this, citation and referencing style. Okay, second to the last. Citation and referencing styles. What gives rise to different citation and referencing styles is how those four components of citation, how they are presented. Every citation style, what gives rise to it is the manner in which those four elements are presented. That is what gives rise to the style. They include the following: formatting, that is the arrangement of words or letters and numbers in terms of font character and the case. Number two is punctuation, the use of punctuation marks. Number three is order of information, that is the arrangement of these elements and the various aspects of each element. And number four is number of information allowed. Some will allow this number of information, others will allow others. And all of these give rise to what? Different styles of citation. Then we'll talk about these citation and referencing styles. We have a good number of citation and referencing styles in the literature. The list that is here is not exhaustive, because even today, the people are still coming up with other referencing styles. But these ones are the most notable ones. Number one is the APA style, which is the American Psychological Association style. Next is the MLA style, which is the Modern Languages Association of American style. The next one is MHRA, which is Modern Humanities Research Association style. Number three is IEEE, which is Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering style. We have CBE, Council of Biological Editors style. NLM, National Library of Medicine style. AMA, American Medical Association style. ACS, American Chemical Society style. AMS, American Mathematical Society style, AIP, American Institute of Physics style, then we have Vancouver style, we have the Harvard style, we have the Chicago stroke, Philadelphia style, and there are so many other styles. And the last place, I was made to understand that the format that is approved here is the upper style, especially 7th edition. It is contained in the slides. I have made some inputs in understanding the upper 7th edition. So when you get the slides, you go through them, and I'm sure that they are very much explanatory and exhaustive. If you follow all of them, you won't have any problem with citation, you won't have any problem with that. And having said that, I want to thank you all. Let's take, I saw the hand. Let's just take the phone.
Right, that means that once already or this abstract. So the abstract the reports. That's number one. Number two, you have mentioned the issue number and the voting number. I want to really understand what is the issue. I know one is outside, one is in the back. The issue number, I think, is the one in the back. Then what is the issue number? So maybe the opinion.
Okay. Number one, let me answer the first one. You mentioned abstract. Like I said, that those things are not exhaustive. Okay? It is possible you can see a faculty that says no need for abstract. But yes, abstract is important. And what is abstract? It's a summary of all that we have done. What is clear? Just to summarize what we have done and present. So that by reading through your abstract, somebody has covered all that you have done. And the person will either have interest in what you have done, or the person will develop lack of interest. Is that clear? So abstract is important. Coming to the second question you asked, issue number and volume number. That exists in journal articles. There are some journals that publish almost every mainline journal publishes every year. And that, of course, becomes the volume of the journal. It is always outside of the bracket. But there are some journals that will publish once every year, while there are journals that publish maybe, most mainline journals publish quarterly. The first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter of the year, which means maybe even though it is 2024, for instance, they have published the first one in March, maybe the second one in June, the third one in September, and the fourth one in December. In such a situation, this journal publishes 4 issues in each volume. All of them will be at volume 24, issue 1, that of March. Volume 24, issue 2. Out of that, volume 24, issue
Is the last question. No, it's asking.
Okay, so our faculty rep has spoken. So that will be the last question. Go ahead.
Why not?
Thank you.
Where we are at now, some persons will say that some persons will say that the name comes first. Yes, subsequently, I believe I am honest.
Okay. Okay. The problem of using a tag, is that what you are saying? Okay, like I have said, if you go through the upper referencing slide, it will tell us everything that we need to know about that. First of all, a tag is used in upper 7th edition when we have more than 2 authors. Anytime we have more than 2 authors, we use a tag. Whether it is at the beginning or wherever it is what? A tag. Is that clear? Wherever it is, that is upper 7th edition. Whether it is in parenthetical citation or it is in narrative citation, a term. Is that clear? So that is upper 7th edition referencing style.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
Please, can we clap for our thank you very much for coming. We thought it very we thought it's very necessary to engage someone outside of us to come and give us a fundamental knowledge of biostatistics. Okay? Ordinarily, or previously, one of us can just give me and start reading how to do statistics for you, and you will not kill us, and you will not do anything. But we thought it too wise. You need to get something. You have to come all the way from back to do this. Okay? So you really need to appreciate it. And also, PhD students, equally pass through what you're going through. And we know that you needed this, and we had to force you to come to do this. So, for MSc students, it's a very good platform for you. So that is the end for 601. We write our exam before July ends. And then tomorrow we are taking 701. It's not too technical. It's not something that is as heavy as this. It's just synopsis. Immediately after your immediately after your post you write your synopsis and submit to the university for approval. So we're just going to show you the format of writing synopsis, and then someone will just make you on how to write grants, because that's the next level of your endeavor after your PhD. You need to get grants for this school. So that's basically what you're going to do tomorrow. So we may not go online live. Yes, we will not go live. It costs a lot of money. So what we are going to do is just to record it and also share it. So thank you very much. And you are still available. Anytime we have opportunity to organize a workshop, anytime we have opportunity, listen now, listen. Anytime we have opportunity, because what we've done now these 2 days, it's a marathon, something that takes weeks. We will have a systematic review. All these references we are talking about, so there are packages for references. All these things are things that they do researchers. So in the event that we're able to organize a private workshop, we invite you, and you will come, and you will pay, and you will learn hands-on. So thank you very much. The dean is not available, unavoidable, and he's inviting you people to the faculty workshop next week. He said that the PG students should make themselves available, especially on the second page. Yes. Then those of you, how many of you submitted abstracts? You know, before you graduate, you have to present your abstract in a conference. And this is a platform we are offering. We are not making use of it. So it's one of the requirements for PhD. Abstract
not a volunteer.
Okay, you want to?
Please, for tomorrow, I didn't get it very well. You clarify us. You said either something like no, it's online or something you download.
I said we will be here. Those online, we will be live. We will be live streaming. We will be here to take record for them. Record. Yes, 9. We're having an inaugural lecture tomorrow. So I'll take it first before the next person. But my lecture will be the same time.